What's up, man?
I don't know. What's up with you?
Oh,
Did you,
same old.
This is the first, no, we record it. Do we record since Record Store Day?
I don't think we have, actually.
Did you make it through your pile?
I did. It's a smaller pile than last time.
Yeah,
Slightly smaller, but smaller.
The only thing I haven't gotten completely through yet is my War box set, which that's 5 records, and I have been buying other records. So I don't feel too bad about that.
Yeah, I kind of went on a spree lately.
Yeah, I'm over 400.
I think I just got to 250 this week.
Yeah, congratulations. You had a bum one in your collection that you bought though from the.
I was very sad. That Future album, it still played really great, but it had a nice chip in there, and that made me cry a little bit. That hurt deep down.
Which album was it?
Future, Evil, EVOL.
Is it a rap album?
It is. It's one of my favorites from back in the day.
But at least it's on the outer edge.
Right. It's on the very outside, so it still played perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And the red makes it look really sharp, too.
I will say that was a very, very pretty red.
It looks great on the turntable, too.
You'd be proud of me. I've been at Target a few times lately, and I've come very close to buying Starboy a few times.
I looked for it for your record for this episode, too.
Yeah. I had just bought a bunch of records the 2 times I was there, and I'm like... Chelsea was with me, and I'm like,
oh, she might have killed
you.
With that one.
If I wanted that record, I would have got that record.
Yeah.
And she gave me crap because I said on here that she refused to go with us this time. She's like, did you mention that I had worked for like 12 days in a row? And I'm like, no, absolutely
Chelsea,
not.
The 3 people that listen,
Aaron's parents,
take no offense.
Aaron's parents. And the 1 or 2 other people that listen to us don't care about your work schedule.
Speaking of my parents, shout out happy birthday to my dad and to my fiance Melissa.
Yeah.
Same day.
Yes. Happy birthday, Mr. Rhodey.
Yes.
And congratulations to Aaron. He pulled out the ring.
I did. My grandma's ring. Made it that much special.
Doesn't get much more serious than that.
Definitely not.
So we should probably get started and stop.
I suppose.
Dinking around.
Clean shirt, new shoes, and I don't know where I'm going to. Silk suit, black tie. I don't need a reason why.
What up, peeps? We are recording more in the evening. We are at Aaron's house in the beautiful city of Appleton, Wisconsin. Obviously, I'm a little keyed up tonight. I haven't had caffeine in hours, so I don't know what's going on. I think I just missed all y'all.
Absolutely. We're turning into night owls today.
Night owls, absolutely.
At the crack of 10 after 8.
Yeah. So with me, as always, is my guy, Aaron Rhodey. The guy who inspired Princess Leia's gold bikini. The guy who got kicked out of the Wonder Woman 84 premiere for looking better than Gal Gadot in the Wonder Woman costume. As I just said, Aaron Rhodey.
Yo, I could pull that off real well.
You could. You got curves. You got curves. You got curves for days.
I think that might be my new favorite intro.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, I had a little bit more of a... serious one, and then I was like, no.
Oh, we're not serious.
We're not serious at all. So let's talk about another cheery note, sarcasm intended. Joseph Michael Dusty Hill of ZZ Top died on July 28th.
Yes, rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace,
Admittedly,
man.
I'm not up to date on my ZZ Top knowledge, but I mean, everybody recognizes them in the music industry.
They have that pretty iconic... I'm not musically talented enough to explain it, but that almost kind of like boogie guitar type of technique.
And who can forget their long beards, too?
Right. Did you ever hear the story about those beards?
Mm-mm.
So as I understood it, they had broken up for a while, and they didn't keep in contact with each other. And then when they came back together, they all had those beards.
That's awesome. That makes that so much cooler.
I don't know if that's true, but that's something one of my relatives told me when I was a kid.
I hope that is true.
So Dusty Hill played bass, keyboards. He did backing vocals. He was inducted with the rest of the band in 2004 to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And then looks like he's gonna be replaced by their longtime guitar tech, Elwood Francis, which was Hill's wish.
That's kind of cool. That's really cool.
So it sounds like ZZ Top had a bit of a succession plan.
Yeah. That's kind of. I feel like that's not something a lot of bands have.
I don't think so.
When things happen, bands typically go their separate ways, or they're just done. So I think that's cool that they had at least somewhat of a plan going.
They kept in the family. It looks like, which
Yeah.
is cool. So, I mean, I don't know much about Elwood, but I'm sure if he's been their guitar tech for years, I'm sure he knows his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about them still going? I mean, lots of bands do it.
I think, we've talked about bands that need to hang it up in the past. I think they're a band that's done a lot of, like, greatest hit kind of tours lately. They're not still trying to make new stuff that I really know of. I'm okay with that. Yeah. Why not hang your hat on what you're good at?
I don't think that they're out there trying to posture and show that they're the best band in the world. They're just trying to, still be out there with the fans. I haven't looked at their prices of their tickets anytime recently, but I also don't think they're kind of like the Rolling Stones where they charge an exorbitant amount of money for stuff.
I think they're a band that knows exactly who they are, and they know exactly who their fan base is, too.
I also think it's typically harder to replace, say, a lead singer.
Yeah.
Because the lead singer is such a unique part of the sound of the artist, of the band.
Well, you look like a band like Queen when they lost Freddie. You're not going to replace a guy like that.
Right. Yeah, and I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole with Queen. I mean, I love Queen.
I like to poke that bear a little bit if you guys can't tell at home.
Yeah. No offense to Adam Lambert, but...
You're just not Freddie. And nobody is. It's okay.
Yeah, you can't live up to that.
No.
We just can't. I don't... hardcore fans say he's not trying to. He's trying to honor Freddie, but tomato.
Right.
So... another interesting thing I saw, this was something that kind of came into my attention from a friend of the show, Mr. Brandon, who we had talked to at 2 Record Store days ago. He shared an article with me about a San Antonio area record collector needing to sell his over 100,000 records due to illness. I had read the article, but when I was prepping for the show, I couldn't find an article that wasn't hidden behind a paywall at that point, so I couldn't get all of the facts.
And I have the same issue when I tried to look too, which 100,000 records is a lot.
It is. If I'm going off...
I thought I had a lot, and I had 250. You're just over the 400 number. And
yeah. I think 403, I want to say.
We have a lot of records.
We do. I mean, I think at that point, I would struggle to remember what I have a hard time remembering what I have now.
For sure, you got to have a really good catalog at that point.
Right. Absolutely. And then if I'm remembering correctly from the article, I think he used to have a store, and he wasn't able to maintain it due to this illness, which sounds to me terminal from what I got out of it. So he's rehoming these records to pay off medical bills,
which is sad, but it's also really cool that he's doing that.
Yeah,
he's making sure these records are going to people who will enjoy them and appreciate them, and hopefully not scalp them and try to sell them off again.
And taking care of his family too.
Right.
Well, I remember too. This is just off my head. I remember a year or so ago, I saw an article about a British collector who had died, and he had a lot of records too. And his family was literally letting people come down to the basement and just take anything they wanted for $1.
Right.
And some of these $1 each, and some of these were extremely rare and valuable. Mm-hmm. And their perspective was that he had enjoyed those records for years, and he wanted someone to get a special find,
which is
very admirable.
Really awesome. It reminds me a lot of, I used to watch the show American Pickers on History Channel all the time.
I love that show, but that show is so scripted. There's no way it's not.
Yes, but they would go to these people's farms, and there'd be my grandparents lived here for 40, 50 years, and they collected this and that, and there were people who were like we're not going to use this. We would just throw this stuff away. So if you guys want it, yeah, you can have it for 5, 10, 15 bucks, stuff like that. And I think things like this, especially records, should go to people who are going to use them, appreciate them, and cherish them.
Right. Not some D-bag flipper, as we've discussed earlier. We're not a fan of flippers.
No.
We're not a fan of seeing a collector's edition of something coming out. You going down to the store, you buying 50 copies of it, and selling it on eBay or whatever.
The other thing I really don't like is if there is a collector's edition coming out and you buy it and keep it sealed. To me, there's no point in that. I get collecting to collect and have value, but there's a fine line between an avid admirer of the hobby and a collector.
I don't think I'm a collector. I think I'm a music lover that collects records.
Yes. And you listen to all of your records.
And I do, and I never would, like, I think I've told Aaron this in the past, but I've not mentioned it on the show. I buy a record that's still in the shrink wrap. What's the first thing I do?
You rip that sucker right off.
Right, because shrink wrap keeps shrinking, and I have bags I can put my records in to keep.
I do the same thing. I don't like keeping the shrink on.
But anyway, circling back around, so what Aaron and I were discussing before the show is, what do you want done with your collection when you die?
This is a tough question.
You collect watches as well, so if you want to, and I collect comic books.
Watches, hats, video games. I got a lot of issues.
Yeah. Well, you're getting married now, so I'm sure that'll cut down.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Melissa, earmuffs.
I've been given very specific instructions, and I'm told as long as the lights stay on, I can buy whatever I want.
Right. Knock on wood.
So I think there's a couple different things that go into this question. It's one of those, at what point in life are you having to get rid of your collection? Say something happened 2 weeks from now, I would want you to be able to go through and pick things that, you might want. The rest of it can be donated to either the Second Chance store or Exco or wherever, so they can do with it what they will. And if they make money off it, great. If they want to make money and donate it to some hospital or research fund or something like that, that's great too. If I am, 50 years from now,
you have your 150,000 records,
right? And I'm in my, 70s, 80s. I've got a couple kids. I would like them to be able to go through, and hopefully they would be music collectors and music lovers too. And turntable technology may be quite different at that point, and I would like them to be able to pick through it, and you of course to be able to pick through it. Main thing is I would just want them to go to someone who's going to appreciate them. I don't want them to be just thrown in a dumpster somewhere or starting somebody's fire in their backyard or anything like that.
I hope nobody would burn your records. That'd be terrible.
It reminds me of the Chicago White Sox when they had Death to Disco Night and they burned a bunch of disco records.
Or like Fahrenheit 451 where they're burning books and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Would you feel the same way about your watches?
Oh, for sure. Sure. My grandpa actually gave me his dad's pocket watch with the instructions to hand them down to somebody you trust and keep it in the family.
I love pocket watches.
Yeah. So I would want them to go to somebody who's going to wear them and appreciate them as well.
And you're like, the video games you can just sell.
Depends on which one, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any video games that any kind of attachment to.
Right.
So anyway, for me, Chelsea and I have actually talked about this a little bit, not like extensively. She kind of implied to me that she wouldn't get rid of them.
Right.
And I was like, and I told her, I'm like, especially nowadays, like where she's still relatively young and has a lot of time left. I don't feel like I need her to keep all of them.
Right.
So I'm kind of in the same spot with you. Like, if there was something in there that she really felt attached to, I'd want her to keep it, or something that gave her a positive memory of me. I'd want probably you and my friend Steve Main to you first. I mean, you definitely first because we do all this together. And I would want you to go through and pick out some things that you like you'll listen to and you'll really appreciate it, or something that makes you have a good thought about me.
Mm-hmm.
Probably my cousin Rick too. He's a younger guy. He doesn't have a ton of records, but music is something that I kind of got him into at a younger age, and he was far better at it. He played in bands and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just one of my favorite people in the world. I would like him to have some of my records. And then Steve, who's kind of was my guru for when I was getting into this. We don't have a lot of overlap on stuff that we like, but if he went through my collection and he found something he liked, I'd want him to have
And
it.
I think that's a lot cooler too when you're in the hobby with somebody else and they don't have a ton of overlap. You and I have a good number of overlap, but of course we each have different things that, I have a lot of hip hop albums that you may not have. And
Right.
if I hadn't gotten you DJ Jazzy Jeff and if something happened, I hope that's one that you would have taken.
I would have. I absolutely would probably take the vast majority of your hip hop if you passed away, and well, if you and Melissa are married, I'd her permission, and
Right.
if not married at that point, your parents.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't sell a single one of them. I would keep them for my entire life, and I would treat them very well.
Yeah.
So
Going along the lines of, Chelsea saying she would keep some of yours, Melissa actually asked me the other day, you should teach me how to play a record on the table so when you're gone at work, I can listen to some of these records, which I thought was actually really cool.
Chelsea's got a couple. She doesn't do it a lot, but she does have a couple records, like the Nightmare Before Christmas soundtrack, and
I made sure the first time Melissa put one on that table that I was watching like a hawk.
Well, I mean,
I've been buying lots of soundtracks lately. I picked up in the Heights soundtrack, which I mentioned on the Record Store Day show, and I also just got the Moana soundtrack last night.
Great soundtrack.
She loves all that kind of stuff, so I could definitely see her pulling some of those out. And she got me The Greatest Showman for my birthday, I think. And she really likes that. That's one of her favorite movies.
I think one of the last times she did it, she said something to the effect of she was putting the needle down and then starting the table, and I'm like,
oh boy, had a little heart attack.
Yeah, well, thankfully it was on a record that I don't consider to be my record,
Yeah.
and I told her, and I was constructive about it. I didn't make her feel bad or anything like that, because we got to be inclusive.
Right, absolutely.
But finishing up the question, and then I would probably want anything that you guys didn't want and Chelsea didn't want. I don't like Armando to put them up and sell them at auction and give Chelsea the money.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
Especially if I died like with a bunch of medical bills,
Mm-hmm.
I'd especially want that. So another thing we were talking about just before the show. First, let's kind of lay some background with it. So I was watching This Is Pop on Netflix, which I've talked about a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And some fans of the show, if you've listened to all of our episodes, and remember at one point I gave Aaron an Orville Peck record.
Yeah.
And I don't
just played it the other day.
Did you really?
I did.
I was wondering, off subject here for a second, I was wondering if that was my worst pick I ever got you.
It's the one I've played the least, but I don't know if I'd call it the worst pick.
Yeah, because that's kind of it's a somber music. Anyway, he was hosting the episode, and he talked, and he's an openly gay man. And then,
did he have the mask on?
Yeah, he only wears that. He does like the kiss thing where he never lets people see him without his face, and Orville picks a fake name. Well, anyway, he was hosting it, and he was talking about how country gatekeeping, meaning like keepers of what's considered to be country music, and he used Lil Nas and Old Town Road as an example, whereas that song was absolutely dominating the country charts until it got to a certain point, and then they pulled it and basically said this isn't country.
It pissed off a lot of country fans, that's for sure.
Right.
A lot.
Like these gatekeepers who decide, what's the standard for country music, what's acceptable, both in personal and professional.
And I think somebody like Cowboy Troy, who did a lot of work with Big and Rich when they first came around, kind of opened the door for guys like Lil Nas X to do that like country hip hop stuff.
Right, and then we got rap rock, which kind of, I think, was teetered in there, and I think Kid Rock kind of veered off that road into the more country vibe with that as well.
That was a weird.
It was a weird.
That was a
transition.
weird side of Kid Rock.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it, but it was strange.
But what we were talking about before the show was actually Taylor Swift.
Oh boy.
So, Aaron, why don't you share about what you were talking about her re-releases?
So we were kind of talking about how each of us were at the record store multiple times in the last few days.
Because we have a problem.
It's only a problem if it interferes with the rest of your life, which we are close.
At times.
But we won't talk about that.
Yeah.
There were two artists that I noticed they had too many copies of their album. One was Billie Eilish, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
And her new album just came out. I don't know the name of it. But she actually kind of looks a little bit like Taylor Swift on the cover. She's got the blonde hair. She's got the sweater on.
And it comes with some sort of silk hanky.
Yeah, it's just strange. But the other was Taylor Swift. And
Aaron and I are divided on Taylor Swift. In some aspects, I like Taylor Swift.
you know, I actually just told Melissa's cousin at our camping trip last weekend that he could DJ our wedding. And there were 3 artists I told him to not play. 1 and 2 were Cardi B and Lizzo, and I said absolutely none of them. And then I said,
he's gonna have my photo at the DJ booth being like, nothing this man asked for.
And then the third one I said was keep the Taylor Swift to a minimum. And at that point, he threw his hands up and he said, I'm done. I can't DJ your wedding anymore. I think Taylor Swift is very talented. She's just not for me. I don't think there's any denying that she's not a very good singer. She is, at this point in her career, re-recording and re-releasing a lot of her earlier music, but she's kind of stripping it down. She's taking the country sound away, and she's doing it her way this time. One of her albums, I forget the exact title of it. I think it's Love Story, but in parentheses it says, But Taylor's Way, which is kind of cool. I like that she's being able to finally be creative and have a say in her music, and I
feel like Red was the first time she did that.
Yeah.
She didn't re-record it.
And that was a lot poppier than her other stuff.
Right, but I it's the one record I own, and it's not, there's no country sound effects in
Right.
the background. There's no slide guitar. There's no
Right.
overuse of cymbals and things
And
like that.
I think she came up at such a young age that her first record deal, she was kind of taken advantage of.
Yeah, this is a theory. We just
She-
want to say that this is a theory
Right.
we have.
She wasn't, from what it seems like, given a ton of creative control. She was portrayed as
She was
this,
what, like 15 or 16?
Yeah. She was portrayed as this small town country girl, perfect, doesn't do anything wrong kind of stuff. She would just sit on a stool in the middle of the stage and just sing at her concerts, from what I hear.
Girl Next Door.
Yeah, it was kind of almost like small town Hannah Montana kind of thing. And
Yeah.
then pop star is kind of what it seems like. And now all of that's been stripped away. She's in her mid-20s now, I think.
Yeah, like 26 or
Something
something
like
around
that.
there. Let me
She's-
check my fan site that I run. I'm kidding. I don't have a Taylor Swift fan site.
That may be the end of this. I think we're finally seeing the real Taylor Swift at this point in her career.
And I like it. I mean, I'm not going to become a diehard Taylor Swift fan.
So I
but
should take back that T Swift album I got.
Depends on which one it is. So yeah, we were wondering like if she just got kind of sucked up into the country gatekeeping. She got told how she had to act and how she had to be, and then when she kind of distanced herself from it, and she's just going back and probably in her mind fixing some things.
I think it's cool that we're seeing country artists with a little more personality these days. You think back to like the George Straits, the Garth Brooks, their cowboy hat, blue jeans, belt buckle, and cowboy boots. You're not seeing that too much anymore.
Right, but then there were also, in one of the documentaries I was watching, the Renegades, like Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson, and there were some female ones, and I apologize that I can't think of their names, but they had like, what is it, the Renegades album or something like that, where it's a sampler of all of these country musicians that were considered to be going against the grain with things. And Willie Nelson, I know, had even recorded some songs with like R&B singers and stuff, and like the labels were afraid to put that out. And I think that was in that same that same episode with Orville Peck. I think they talked about it on there.
And one of my favorite country artists is Florida Georgia Line, and they are very poppy, country rock kind of stuff. They've done a couple remixes of their songs, one with Nelly and the other with Jason Derulo. So they've kind of branched out into that hip-hop, pop kind of sound too. And it definitely works. I remember when Tim McGraw did a song with Nelly for one of Nelly's albums too. And I mean, that worked. So I don't...
This is going to be a shock to you. I don't know much about Nelly.
I almost got a Nelly album for you for this show.
Country Grammar, I think, is the only song I ever heard.
Yeah.
And I will be straight with you.
I think that's by far his best album.
I made fun of him a lot back in the day,
yeah.
too.
I love that he's an actor now.
Yeah.
Nelly's one of my favorites.
So we wish Taylor Swift, the best of luck with things.
Taylor, if you ever want to start rapping, I can get behind that.
Yeah.
And if
you want to, debut...
T-Swizzle.
You want to debut on our show rapping, that's fine, too.
Oh, yeah, as long as it's a freestyle.
Yeah. I mean, I'll beatbox terribly for you if you need me to do that.
I could see it now.
I mean, I know she listens to us.
Absolutely.
So.
As well as we talk about her? Come on.
So,
do you want
our
to talk
boy...
a little about Billie?
About Billie?
About how weird Billie is? Billie Eilish.
Oh. I can't, I don't know that I can be constructive. We try not to be negative about artists and make fun of people.
With the exception of a few.
I understand that Billie Eilish speaks to a generation of a lot of women, younger women.
Misfits, basically.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Right. Ones who may have self-esteem issues and emotional problems, and she's kind of become this voice for them and what they're feeling. And I know I think I want to say it was her brother.
Yep.
Steve Main, my friend, kind of gave me the lowdown on her. And he spoke so highly of her. I legitimately tried to listen to her. And
it's hard.
Yeah, when I listen to music, it has a heavy effect on my mood.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, Billie Eilish,
she's very dark,
depresses the hell out of me.
Yep.
So I wish her the best of luck. Also, she does some things that I think are kind of weird, like a silk handkerchief in her record, or she has action figures or dolls, or whatever you want to call them. Yeah. I don't understand why. But if you're a Billie Eilish fan and you're listening to her and she speaks to you, that's awesome.
Right.
Don't stop listening to her. I just can't get behind her.
I think there's a couple things about her that I really like and admire. One is that she writes all of her music with her brother. So they write and produce a lot of it on their own, which I think is really cool. You don't really hear of too many artists doing that anymore. The other thing is she has said that for all of her albums, she wants to have a quote-unquote different look for all of them. So her first one, she was with like the baggy clothes.
Kind of like a David Bowie kind of deal.
Yeah, she was with the baggy clothes, the oversized sweater, the green hair, all that stuff. And now she looks like Taylor Swift on the cover. She's got bright blonde hair. She's got a freaking sweater on. She's got silk handkerchiefs or something in there. And
she looks very artistic. I won't argue
right.
with that.
It's creative and it's unique, and I admire that. But I'm in the same boat as you, where I can't quite get behind the music yet.
Right.
We're always open to try new things, but at this point, not my cup of tea.
It's very rarely where I'll come out and be like, this artist sucks and I hate them. The only one that comes to mind is the Insane Clown Posse. If you are listening and you love Insane Clown Posse, I will fight you.
I want to see it.
I'm just saying.
Oh, I want to see it so bad.
All right. So, moving on. So, let's talk about our boy, Bruno Mars.
Oh, I love me some Bruno Mars.
I love everything about Bruno Mars.
I don't think there's a better soul singer right now than Bruno Mars.
A modern day one.
Right.
There are some OGs that still record, and you can't touch them.
Right.
But Bruno brings the hot fire and the energy to all of his performances. I would love to hear him like sing a soft, soulful album.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like something like, you know, Al Green or something along those lines. Like, I think he would kill it.
That's still hands down my favorite Super Bowl halftime show is Bruno Mars.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was awesome.
I remember seeing all the memes that said a football game happened at the Bruno Mars concert.
Yeah.
It was so good. And then, like, I had a couple random friends that were bashing Bruno on Facebook, and I'm like, whatever.
He's so
talented.
He's so talented. He's such a good singer. And
I just hope he stays away from the cocaine.
He looks like he's from the 70s.
He does.
He really does.
Even more so now that he has his
Silk
Sonic stuff he's doing with Anderson .Paak.
You know, and Anderson .Paak he's not like a super well-known rapper, but
I knew nothing about him.
He's one of the bigger ones in rap right now, and I think he's like a true 90s kind of raw hip-hop rap kind of guy. So to see him paired with Bruno in Silk Sonic is strange, but watching that performance at the Grammys was awesome.
I feel like that has to be born out of friendship.
Oh, it's got to be.
Like I feel like that was probably Bruno's baby, and he brought Anderson.
Well, and they had the gold suit coats, the black pants. They went on right after the Black Pumas, so it went one right into the other. It worked so well.
So I'm gonna be straight. Like, I am jonesing for the Silk Sonic album. Like, guys, if you're not gonna release it soon, at least give me a date. Just because you're killing me.
Every Friday I wake up and one of the first things I do is check Spotify and iTunes for their new releases. And I sent James a link to their new song. I believe it's called Skate.
I thought it was Roller.
Now I've got to look.
You can look it up. But I was at work and I didn't get a chance to listen to it right away. And I heard it later and I'm like, it's a beautiful song. Skate. Nope, you were right.
And the first one that they did at the Grammys was Leave the Door Open.
Right, which I'm sure most people have heard of. And it feels like a song I would be at a roller rink.
It really does, now that you say that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's what they were going for. And they're just reviving this.
Which, again, is a very 70s feel.
Yeah, they're reviving this form of music that has long since been dead, but beautiful. And people have just immense level of fondness. So anyway, their release kind of spawned a conversation. Let's talk about singles.
So I think the first thing you said was, damn, just released the album already.
Right.
And I think that very accurately sums up how a lot of people feel, not just about these guys, but music in general.
So let's talk about that for a second. So, like, old school, and I think this is how it's really always been, is probably into like the 50s, I would think, like when, you know, we started to have like, you know, like the boy bands, the British Invasion, and maybe I'm wrong, and if you're listening and I'm off base, please contact us on One More Record podcast on Facebook. There's a button to get us to our email, or One More Record podcast at Gmail, or you can even message me on Twitter, One More Record on podcast on Twitter. I think you would release a single, and you'd release like another single, and you'd release like another single, and then, you know, maybe not that many, but sometimes, and then you'd release the album. And I guess old school, it used to be, it would get people DJs to play it on the radio, and then build up hype about the album. And then I think kind of in the 80s and 90s, it became a thing where people were releasing single records and single CDs, and basically getting you to buy the album in chunks, and then later buy the actual album.
Yeah. And I think so much of it early on was who's going to get the radio playtime. And I understand it's a great marketing thing. You know, people aren't going to get to know you unless you're on the radio. When I think of like early hip hop groups, everybody was trying to get their single out there. Now, that's not necessarily how music works.
No, you got Spotify, you got Pandora.
I don't want to say
Apple
it, but
Music.
Nobody listens to the radio anymore. If I'm in the car, I don't listen to the radio.
If I do, it's because I don't want to mess with my phone, and I just hit buttons so I have some noise in the background.
Right.
But I don't get in my car going, man, I'm going to look for something to listen to on the radio.
Right. And, I get it. You want to have a new song on the hot Spotify playlist or the Apple Music playlist. I don't know how Apple Music works too well.
We're Spotify boys.
But I don't know. I just think music in such a different spot now than it was like 40, 50 years ago, that singles aren't necessarily the thing to do anymore.
Oh, I agree completely.
People aren't buying albums, they're streaming albums. If you release 3-4 singles, you brought this up the other day, you've probably heard the best 4 songs on that album.
Most cases, especially with like pop albums.
So people are going to pick and choose those 4 songs.
Well, that's kind of like
not going to listen to the rest of it.
It's kind of like that whole like digestible media thing that we talked about early in the show. Mm-hmm. Like was when we got into record collecting, this forces us to sit down and listen to an entire album, and you can't easily jump around. And I think people who do like singles are people who like to jump around.
Well, and I don't think artists necessarily write albums anymore either. A lot of modern artists, I should say.
No, they get a team of people.
Right. Well, even you don't hear a concept album too much anymore.
No.
When you put on something from the 70s, the 80s, you put on that Black Pumas album, you can tell that was all written to be on one album.
And I would venture a guess it was probably a small group of people that wrote that. It wasn't a lot of hired people. It was probably those guys writing it.
You put on, who's into a group today? I don't know. You put on like an Eminem album, or not maybe Eminem, but some hip hop album. There are going to be so many different types of sound in that album that these songs were just very clearly just thrown on one group playlist and just released to get people some content.
Well, many of these people have multiple producers on an album, too.
Right.
Like my boy Butch Walker, he's not uncommon for him to show up on an album and produce 2 or 3 songs, and then there's other people doing it. Like rarely do you get someone like Bob Ezrin who produced for like Kiss and Alice Cooper who does a whole album anymore.
When you look at an album like Thick Freakness from last time, that was all recorded in one session.
Yeah.
That's unheard of now. It could take 4 or 5 sessions to record one song.
Well, as before Auto-Tune.
Well, yeah. That's another story.
It's another story.
Auto-Tune ruined music, according to some people.
It was Auto-Tune, but it wasn't T-Pain. We love you, T-Pain.
We do. We do, absolutely.
We know your game. Hit us up. We'll get you on the show. So I think, we're kind of leaving things. I don't think there's a place for it anymore.
There's so many other ways to build hype and build attention for an album that I don't think releasing too many singles is
Here's an idea.
Really worth it.
Write a good album. And it'll still sell itself.
Just give us the album.
Tour. Put on a good show.
That's all we want.
That's all we want. So Bruno,
we're not asking too much here.
Bruno Anderson, and we know you listen to the show.
And I'm sure you guys write a lot of your songs too.
Right. Just put the album out.
Yes, please.
Or send us 2 advanced copies on vinyl.
We will buy it for sure.
Yes, 2 advanced copies on vinyl, please.
Signed would be great.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's just kind of leaving us to the reviews.
Yeah. You want to go first? Actually, I should go first.
You should go first. I have numerous pages of notes here. We're going to do a deep dive.
Oh, I went way out of James' comfort zone, and I'm so happy that I did.
Oh, it's gonna be a show.
So last time James got me Neutral Milk Hotels in the Aeroplane Over the Sea. He sent me a picture of the album, I think, or the album cover.
I had bought it.
And I kind of dabbled in the first song, and I really enjoyed it. So this is what he picked up for me. It was released in 1998. I was 4 years old.
I was 2 years away from graduating high school.
So when I think 98, I think of a few different things. To me, this is where like punk rock kind of started or became mainstream, and I don't know if maybe that's just because I'm young and naive.
I don't think that's when punk rock started. I think it is when punk rock became kind of mainstream, though. Because, the Kinks are considered to be like one of the pioneers of punk rock music. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your review.
So the other thing is Eminem was about to hit it big, and grunge and grudge rock, I think, was big at this point too. When I
Yeah.
think like Nirvana, stuff like that.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I probably aged myself really badly with that, but
It's okay.
it is what it is. With this album, I don't feel any of those. It almost feels like I'm in the late '60s or early '70s music wise.
The cover even looks like it.
It does. It's amazing. I thought my copy of the cover was faded because it's got like orange splattered here and there, and I tried to find a good picture of it online, and I'm like, nope, that's normal. So that's fine. Right away, you get hit with a nice, soft, relaxing vibe at the beginning, which I like. I like that soft, relaxing, chill music. The horns hit you, which you don't hear horns too much in modern music either.
They were kind of popular in the 90s.
Mm-hmm. Some of the sound effects used on the second track of the album, which I think is King of Carrot Flowers Parts 2 and 3, it actually reminds me a little bit of some of what you would hear in Dark Side of the Moon, which was interesting. I didn't expect to hear any of that in there. The first few songs remind me of kind of being at the bar, just having a couple beers and having a good time, swaying back and forth and getting that Irish drinking song on. Like I said earlier, I feel like I'm being bounced between a Beatles album to Pink Floyd and all over the 60s and 70s with the different songs. But that being said, you can totally tell these songs were meant to be put together on this album, and they're all together for a reason. These aren't just singles that were written and just thrown on an album just to get stuff out there. One of my favorite things about this album is at the end, you basically get played out by all the different instruments and sounds you've heard throughout the whole album. There's a pseudo bagpipe sound in one song. After that, it's like you're out on a farm and hearing all the different animals wake up for the day, and they're just kind of popping up all over the place. It was super cool to listen to and a great way to end the album. The lyrics can be a bit dark at times, though. It's especially true in the song Two-Headed Boy, where they're talking about how the world they need isn't there anymore. And then they go on to talk about bright, shiny things wrapped under a Christmas tree. So that was interesting.
It definitely sounds like a 60s kind of...
Yeah, very much so. So this album actually made me realize how badly I need new speakers, too.
Yeah, because you blew them out recently.
Oh, I sure did. So many of the electric guitar sounds were muffled on my speakers, and I can only imagine it's because of that. On Spotify, things did sound a lot clearer. So now down to the two usual questions. Would I have bought this on my own? Most likely not, although James and I did have a discussion last night about how I almost bought an album yesterday solely based on the cover. So maybe if I saw this one, it would have caught me. I
think you're getting out of your comfort zone a little
for
bit,
sure.
and that's great.
For sure. I had no idea who this group was before, but if I stumbled across it in the store and it was decently priced, I may have got it solely based on the cover. Will I be keeping it? Most definitely, yes. I liken this album pretty close to the J.D. McPherson one that I got during this segment.
Wow.
It's a great album, fun music, something different from the rest of my collection, and I've been listening to it a lot on Spotify, actually.
So normally Aaron and I send our reviews over to each other ahead of time, but I requested to not do that for mine this time, so I didn't hear this already. So that makes me really happy to know
he was going to keep his a secret from me, so I was going to keep mine a secret from him.
That makes me happy to hear that. I'm glad you liked it.
I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. I'll say that.
I mean, and you compared it to JD, because I know you really like that JD album a lot.
I listened to that one yesterday, too.
So I really didn't know much about Neutral Milk, so I looked them up, because that was originally a CD somebody just gave me years ago, so I never looked into them. Apparently, they got back together in like 2010, and then they had a tour 2015, and they said that was going to be the end for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
But they didn't roll out getting back together.
Have you ever looked at their picture on Spotify?
Never.
Look them up once. Oh, that's lame.
So they...
I'd liken them to what I think Dropkick Murphys looked like back in the day. And when I just looked up Dropkick Murphys, it's all of them aged and like in sweaters and khaki pants, and it's kind of depressing.
That's a cute picture.
But yeah, that's what I
apparently
think they would have looked like.
They got 2 albums, which I've seen the On Avery Island one places, but I've never...
Is that the one with the red cover?
Yeah.
That's the other one that I saw at the record store yesterday.
I've never listened to that one, so I can't speak to that one. All right. Do you want to give me my new one, or do you want to do that at the end?
What do you want to do? Because I know you're very hyped for this.
Let's just go into mine. All right. So, Aaron presented me with a copy of This One's For You, the debut studio album for Luke Combs, released June 2nd, 2017 through Columbia National. This album was number one on the top country albums for 50 weeks. This was, my understanding, a record at that point.
I did not know it was on the top for that long.
Yeah, that sounds like, I mean, from what I read, that sounds like a pretty big deal. This album had 3 singles released, Hurricane, When It Rains It Pours, and One Number Away. The album did so well, deluxe reissue was released June 1st of 2018 called This One's For You Too, featuring 5 new tracks. This was to commemorate the album's 1-year anniversary. I actually saw a copy of that today when I was at Walmart. Apparently Leon Bridges is on it as well, Leon was, I don't think, very popular in 2018, or he was just getting started.
I think so.
So, to say that Aaron got me something that was outside of my comfort zone would be an understatement.
I was worried for what you were gonna think of this one.
So we're gonna be real honest here for a minute, okay? So for years, I would openly bash country pop music viciously, to the point where I would make fun of and insult people who listen to it to their faces viciously.
I think I may have been one of those people at one point.
Maybe. I still have some tendencies, but I am very mild by comparison. Like,
for sure.
There were rules. No country music was ever played in my car. Never. Never, never, never.
And now you listen to Luke Combs every day.
So, and then eventually, after I got out of my 30s and got done of openly bashing country music in all forms, this was a thing where I kind of started to become a little more open-minded. So one of the short lists of things that I got from when my father passed away was 2 Waylon Jennings albums. And then my grandfather, loved country music, and I kind of gave Johnny Cash an opportunity around the time the movie about him came out. And again, I would still make fun of people who go to Country USA, which is a local country festival that used to go on, and I would refer to these people in not so nice manners. I probably made people cry about this.
I will preface, I've gone to Country USA once, only for 2 days. I will never go again.
I used to have to drive home from Oshkosh, which is the city that it takes place in, and drive through a gauntlet of drunk couples.
Yeah, I bet that was awful.
It was. It stressed me out really badly. Yep. So, and I'm going to go off script here a little bit. So some of the stuff that I disliked about country music was when I'd sit down and listen to these pop country albums, everything seemed like it was planned out for me. Like, every sound was timed. Every time a chorus kicked in, it was very sculpted and very produced, and it kind of lost its heart to me. And I felt like somebody was making an album purely to get me to buy it, which I know that's what music is. They want me to get me to buy it.
To a point. Yeah.
But there's no emotion, there's no expression in it. It seemed disingenuous to me.
For sure.
So when this album kicked in, the first song out there, his vocals were exactly what I would expect. He was very bassy. The song starts out slow and then has one of those well-timed kick-in moments. He's talking about escaping and being loose, which from every country album I've ever listened to was a very, very common sound. Talks about going out on an adventure with a woman, and then the guitar kicks in. And I'm a firm believer these days there is no rock music anymore. Like,
yeah, I would 100% agree.
I don't think that anybody makes true rock music anymore.
Yeah.
You know who I think does that? Pop country musicians. And hear me out.
Yeah, I can see that.
If you take out a country album and you take out like all of like the slide guitar and the twangy sounds in the background, and you put someone singing a song in a non-Southern accent, it's basically a rock song.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. And then a lot of, not just this song out there, but a lot of the album, that's exactly what was going on. And there were these like rock guitar solos.
Did you look up what he looked like before you listened to the album?
I did.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he looks like a country guy.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Sure. There's a story of, and I don't know if I told this on the last show. He was out on tour one day and he went into a luxury watch shop. He was looking for a new watch, a Rolex or
I
whatever.
don't think you told me this.
And he went in there wearing a flannel shirt, a trucker hat, and blue jeans. They actually kicked him out of the store because they said, "Oh no, you can't afford one of these." And then he pulls up and he's wearing whatever he was wearing, and he said, "No, I'm a well-known country singer. Trust me, I can afford one of these." And they still wouldn't let him look at anything, even try to buy. So he turned around, walked out, went to the next shop down, and got one from them. And I think that speaks a lot to, he is true to himself and his look and his where he comes from.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do. Track number 2, Memories Are Made. Definitely what I was expecting to hear. He's talking about drinking and going out with a friend and reliving the glory days. And at times, the vocals almost had like a church-like quality, which was what I would expect because a lot of people in the South, the Bible Belt, they're very, religious orientated, and I'm nothing against that. But it was written in a way where I could very easily see myself singing the chorus back to him. Mm-hmm. And that was fun. I'm not going to dog on that. I think anytime a song kind of gets stuck in your head and brings a person in on the song, I think that's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lonely One, that was track number 3. Probably the first like truly somber song on this album. It took me a while to figure out what he was doing and what he had going on in the song, but it sounds like he's giving advice to a troubled bartender who recently broke up with someone, trying to tell her that he's been there. He's telling her time will heal wounds. And it's easy to imagine a heartbroken girl sitting in a bar in the in the real world singing along to this.
Right.
Yeah, like I think that's what a lot of country music is you're telling the story of people in an area.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're trying to be relatable to them, and I think he does that really well. And then track number 4 was about exactly, and I've been saying exactly a lot, but it was the most well-sculpted pop country song. I mean, I was not even remotely surprised. It's called Beer Can. Starts out with a slide guitar.
Yes.
I mean, in seconds, I could have laid this song out. This is the blue-collar guys singing about working hard, drinking over the weekend, and, this is exactly what happens. I started thinking about, he's talking about how the beer makes him feel like Superman.
I kind of wondered at what point would you start to feel that way in the album?
Yeah, it was early. It was real early. I'm going to skip through some of these because I really did do like a straight up commentary on pretty much every single song.
So the 5th song on the album,
Hurricane,
was the first single.
Correct, Hurricane. The song about running into an ex. Oh, this is a cheeky song, yeah. But it's interesting. But running into an ex and about how I can ruin your day. Mm-hmm. Essentially describing how like seeing them brings in like a rush of old emotions, and and it does kick into some more of those like notes of rock music, and also like honestly, what he's talking about, I've been there.
Right.
Like yeah. I've been having a perfectly great day, and then you run into your ex or you see him, and it's just like
it's like
just kills your mood.
Yep.
So that song, Hurricane, I definitely related to. Mm-hmm. Again, it was very formulaic. I'm not saying that that's bad. I mean, Luke Combs knows what he's doing, mm-hmm. and the team of people that he writes with, they know what they're doing.
Right.
They're writing to an audience. They know their audience.
Yeah.
One Number Away, I thought was also an interesting song because essentially what it was it was talking about 2 different people who clearly had a fight. Mm-hmm. At one point, and their both too stubborn to call each other. And they're both sitting there wondering what the other one's doing.
Yep.
I thought that was a creative concept for a song. I also thought that musically it was probably one of the least formulaic songs on the album.
It kind of reminds you of Kid Rock and Sheryl Crow when they did Picture.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same vibe.
I would agree with that. I'm just going to skip all the way down to the last song, Honky Tonky Highway. This song...
I knew that one would get you.
This song, I just had visions of cowboys line dancing in my head. And don't get me wrong, if I was at a bar and I was hammered, I'd probably get up and dance to this song as well. He's talking about drinking. There's electric guitar. There was a brief little section where I was like, man, this sounds like the Black Keys for a second.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yes. So, to kind of, wrap things up, there's definitely a lot of rock music in this, and I love rock music. Mm-hmm. The songs are a little more crafted than I'd like. Like, I feel like they're tailor-made to get a certain group of people to buy the album.
Yeah.
And that takes me out of the album. It takes away the emotion and the feeling. Another thing too, years ago when someone was telling me about theater, and I'm talking about live performance theater, they said a truly good note of that is when nothing sticks out, where you don't have one person's not out singing everyone else, mm-hmm. The music's not too loud, the stage isn't like more decorated. They said that's how you know that's good theater. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel that way about music. I feel like there was really nothing in this album that like jumped out at me as being done exceptionally well.
Yeah.
I mean, and then there's the part about all the different topics that get brought up. It really comes down to breaking up, drinking, cutting loose, a blue collar man cutting loose and rallying the friends, and loss.
Yeah.
I mean, what is it? That old joke? If you play a country album backwards,
you get your dog back, you get your truck back, you get your best friend Jack back. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So, question is this something I'm going to keep? No, let's go. Is this something that I would have bought myself? No, I would not have bought this for myself.
Which I knew going into it.
There's no way I would have bought this album for myself, and this is the one time that I will say that unequivocally. There's no chance I would have bought that for myself.
Yeah.
Now, am I going to keep it? Yes. So it may have sounded like there was a negative connotation to this album, but ultimately what this is about us expanding our musical horizons and trying new things.
Right.
And maybe at age 40, it's time I start giving some new genres of music a chance. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm going to listen to this album constantly.
Maybe you need to put your fancy beer away and crack open a Bud Light and listen to Luke Combs.
I'm ordering my trucker hat right now. But it is something that I could see putting on if I have people over and as like an entertainment thing to, create more of a casual environment. I do like all the notes of rock music that are in there, and I can appreciate that. Just, I don't know if he's released more albums.
I think he's got 3 others.
Yeah.
2 or 3 others, yeah.
I think what he does well. I would just like to hear something that he writes by himself.
Yeah. Which I think is fair.
Yeah.
I could see this being one that you and Chelsea listen to together.
Oh, I think she'll listen to it. I mean, she's very much into a lot of more pop music, and country's one of them. I mean, just so you guys know that I'm not a hater, I did buy her a Zac Brown Greatest Hits not that long ago, and there were at least 3 or 4 songs on there I caught myself singing along.
I love Zac Brown.
Yeah. I mean, I went to buy a Greatest Hits album, but, whatever.
That's a topic for a different day.
It's a topic for a different day. So we're going to start winding things down here. So, Aaron, I guess since I'm on a roll here, I'm going to present you with this record, and I'll let you describe it.
So this is Gary Clark Jr., Black and Blue, BLAK and BLU. I love this cover, looking at it. It's almost like a watercolor painting of himself.
And read that little box down the bottom.
The groundbreaking debut album from Gary Clark Jr., mastered for vinyl and Sterling Sound audiophile quality pressing. Owing as much to Kurt Cobain and the Ramones as Buddy Guy and John Lee Hooker, and indebted to hip-hop and psychedelia, Clark is grounded in tradition while standing on the brink of change. That gets me excited. There's a lot of stuff in there that I really like about music.
Yeah, I ordered this from Armando for myself. Not this copy. He unfortunately oversold, so I have not received my copy of this yet. He ordered me a replacement one.
Okay.
So I listened to this on Spotify today, and I was like, yeah, this is a good choice for Aaron.
You know, he's almost got a Jimi Hendrix kind of vibe on the back cover here.
When you hear him play, you'll also agree with that statement.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this. He's
one.
definitely got more of an old school vibe to him. However, I have heard him play other songs that are far more like they got notes of hip hop and stuff in them. I don't think this album is probably going to have a lot of that, but he did like a song for the Justice League soundtrack that was a little bit more modern. Not my jam, but good still.
And looking at the backside, he produced a lot of it himself.
Yeah,
this is co-produced a lot of it.
This is a deluxe like reissue as well.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, it kicks in and it's good right out the gate.
I don't know a ton of blues, and I don't know Gary Clark much at all. I know the name, but that's about it.
So he came to me.
This looks like it's a box set the way it looks.
Yeah, it's a heavy duty box. This guy, he came to me after I found an artist by the name of Benjamin Booker in a time where I was firmly believed I was not going to find any modern music that was good.
Okay.
I was like, there's nobody making good music anymore.
When was this originally recorded?
Let's see, 15? I'm not positive on that.
2012, it looks
12,
like.
Yeah. Once you listen to that,
that's exciting.
He's got live EP on Spotify that he did that precedes this, I think, and it's probably my favorite
live
thing.
Albums are growing on me a lot too.
It doesn't sound live.
He's got the best kind of live version.
Those like EPs that he has on there are high on my wall list. Okay. So anyway, I hope you enjoy.
I'm excited for that one. I went with an album that I got from Armando, and I know you kind of had toyed around with potentially buying it at one point.
A Tribe Called Quest, People's Instinctive Travels, and The Paths of Rhyme. So
the cover that I have, or the copy that I have, has like the almost holographic finish on it.
Which
this one does not.
Cool. This has kind of more of I'd almost say like a 80, well, and it was released in 89, kind of an 80s drawing vibe to it, kind of like an urban sprawl. Also has the color scheme that you see with like traditional African wear, African flags, and it's got a lot of people in like a city environment, all kind of looking at them, and on the back it's much the same. It is a double EP, it looks like. It was released in 1989 on Jive, and then it also has 1990 and 1996. And then after you and I had talked about this album, and I had saw a couple copies of it go up on Armando's auction, you did show this to me, and I was like, I should buy that because the little bit that I heard I liked. And then I had also bought Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 reissue, and this was on there. Some of this was on there.
I thought that was really cool. I didn't realize that until after I had the album.
I didn't either. So this is, like Aaron said, he knew this is something I've been considering getting. So this was absolutely.
And I know you hadn't listened to the whole thing, and
one song.
Hip hop. I'm kind of trying to push you into and branch you into it as well.
And I'm trying to introduce you to electric guitars.
I had heard electric guitars before. That was harsh.
I was gonna get you a Zeppelin album, but they didn't have the one I wanted to get you. And
I figured that's coming at some point.
Yeah.
I've told you many times that I don't know much Zeppelin, so I figured it's coming at some point.
Yeah. So that's all we got for you guys today.
Yeah.
Probably a little longer episode, but we figured we cheated you on the last one.
Yeah, it's a jam-packed show today.
Absolutely. So make sure that you guys have a good summer. Take care of yourselves.
Let us know what you think.
Yep.
Hit us up on Twitter. Start a Twitter war. We're jonesing for one.
Yeah, especially with our self-perceived rivals.
Yeah, right. We will never say that our collection is better than yours.
Never ever.
But it probably is. But, you be the judge.
Yeah. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, of course, make sure you always remember
there's always more vinyl.